everybody. This is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. Quite recently, I was watching The Natural from 1984, starring Robert Redford as Roy Hobbs. And this is a classic movie. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go and do it. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, go and revisit because it is just a fantastic flick. And one of the interesting things to me is that this movie is actually based on a 1952 book of the same name by Bernard Malamute. And I've actually written about Bernard Malamute in my 1933 Gaudi set book. And what I think is really interesting that he did was that he took a lot of historical facts that were happening at the time, and he instituted in the book itself and in the movie. And I think that it was really, really cool because some of these events did happen. He took some literary license, if you will, with some of the events. For example, Roy Hobbs, who is the main character in the book, and I think who is really based on Ted Williams, maybe a little bit of Bob Feller and Eddie Wakis. And he hits a home run into the clock at Wrigley Field. Now, this did actually occur, however, it did not happen in 1939. It was actually Bama Rowell who hit the Bolivia clock at Ebbets Field. He shattered it, and that occurred on May 30th, 1946. There's a few other instances in this movie too, specifically that of the manager, Pop Fisher. They say the Fisher King is basically based on Pop Fisher, but I actually think that it's Charles Adams of the Boston Bruins, the owner of the Boston Bruins, because Charles Adams was actually the minority owner of the Boston Braves from 1927 to 1936. And in the case of Pop Fisher, the manager, uh, if he wins the pennant, he can buy the team. And this actually occurred in 1935 when Emil Fuchs had bought Babe Ruth under circumstances that were really kind of not upheld. Emil Fuchs actually reneged on his contract with Babe Ruth, and when this got word to the Babe, uh, it just ended up in disaster for the entire club. That's when Charles Adams stepped in and had Emil Fuchs removed as the owner of the Braves. And then Adams ended up being president or the majority owner of the team. The problem there was that when this got word back to the commissioner, Landis said you can't be an owner of a race track, which was Suffolk Downs, and be a baseball owner at the same time. Obviously, we know why. All I have to do is look at the 1919 White Sox. So Adams is forced to sell to Bob Quinn, but this isn't the biggest storyline in the movie. In fact, there's a much bigger one, and it's much more famous, in fact. And that's what happens to Roy Hobbs in the hotel. And spoiler alert, he gets shot by a crazed fan, if you will, or a stalker. And this is based on what happened to Eddie Wakis in 1949 when he gets shot in a hotel by a stalker. And I'll be actually talking more about that in an upcoming article at some point early next year. Eddie Wakis, he survived, and the bullet actually missed his heart by less than an inch. He was very, very lucky guy. However, you may not know this, but this isn't the first time. The FBI says it's the first stalker case, and that's not entirely true per se. There is another case. Actually, I think there's two cases. The first one that I can think of, dating back to 1942, is with a ball player named Gordon McNaughton. and McNaughton was a former pitcher by 1942. He played with the Red Sox in 1932 for 2 months, and then he ended up in the minor leagues until 1936. Now, I can't find a card of his. If he has one, it would be in the Z-Nut series, and I'm not sure. At least I've never ever seen one. There is a slight possibility that he could be in one of those series. I just don't know. However, he ended up getting shot and he ended up in the Field of Dreams. And another case that I can think of is with this gentleman right here. And this is Billy Jurges, and this is who I'm going to be talking about today. So Billy Jurges is a really interesting character. He was with the Chicago Cubs. In fact, this is actually a 1933 Gaudy, really nice card. If you're looking to add one to your collection, it is card number 225, and I'll show you the back of it because it is kind of cool. There's the back. Blurry as anything because my camera does not like to pick up sports cards like I do, but this is a really fantastic card. And I have another card of his actually. I'll show that to you right now. And this is a 1939 play ball. And this is card number 35. And I'll show you the back of it real quick. If you guys have not seen one of these, and again, it's blurry, my bad. But this one's really kind of neat. He's on the New York Giants, and you can see the patch that they wore in 1939, the Centennial patch, which I think is really cool. And I really love this set. Probably a little bit more than the 1933 Gaudi set, but the 33 Gaudi set has some great artwork, and I've written extensively about that set. And at some point, I'll have another article out for you guys on the players themselves. In the meantime, though, let's get into Billy Jurges real quickly, and then I'm going to go over two articles that I found on this incident, which I think is really fascinating. Anyway, Billy Jurges was born in 1908 and he passed away in 1997. He made his debut on May 4th, 1931, against the Reds, and he had a lifetime 258 batting average in 1,816 games. Now, that seems like a pretty low batting average, and especially for the 1930s, but he was a phenomenal fielder, just superb. And he played on these Cubs teams that really were kind of in the midst of a dynasty, if you will, starting in about 1929 and ending in 1938, and some say 1945 when they went to their World Series and they lost. And I did get to see the Cubs in the 2016 World Series, and I was just thrilled for those guys and Chicago, by the way. I think 108-year gap between winning a World Series is just an incredible thing. And so, getting back to Billy Jurges, he played in the infield. He was a shortstop, and some of the guys around him were just really incredible as well. This is a really well put together team from year to year. And I'm going to kind of mention a few of these guys. So you had Stan Hack, and I believe Stan Hack was a third baseman. He's one of the best ball players of his generation, in fact, not to be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not sure why he's not included in Cooperstown. It's a real shame, and to tell you the truth. I am a large hall guy, so I don't mind if you guys in Cooperstown have to add another wing just to add some more ball players that you probably should have included a long time ago. Anyway, later on, Phil Calretta joined the team, and I knew Phil pretty well. He was a very nice guy, very good to me, in fact. And so Phil Calretta, I believe he came up in 1934, and man, I forget exactly what position he was at. Maybe second baseman or first baseman, but I can't quite remember. And then you had Charlie Grimm, or Charlie, Cholly. Um, Charlie Grimm, who is the player manager, and he's another guy who probably should be in the Hall of Fame at some point. Again, I'm not sure why some of these guys are not included, and I kind of want to blame this on sports writers, and I'll tell you why another date. I'm not thrilled about a lot of the sports writers today. And this goes back years and years too. And I've talked to other sports writers as well who kind of agree with me that there probably should not be the influence that sports writers have in the Hall of Fame anymore. There could have been a time where that was necessary, but there are problems with this, and the Hall of Fame really kind of needs to change a little bit in order to get ball players into the Cooperstown, and they're not really doing a very good job of it. They haven't since at least the 1970s, early 1970s. Anyway, that's a different story for another time. Um, and then you have Woody English. And Woody English, I remember him as an older man, obviously. I do not remember him playing because I'm not that old, contrary to popular belief. But Woody English, he's a pretty famous ball player in Chicago. He still has a fan following, from what I've heard. And I have done business with him when he was alive. And a very nice guy, again. So he was another pillar of these teams. And then I think he actually went to the Brooklyn Dodgers and ended his career there in the late 1930s. Getting back to Billy Jurges here, Billy Jurges ended his time with Chicago in 1939, and he went to the New York Giants. In 1940, he actually got beamed in the head by a Bucky Walters fastball, and that was on June 23rd. And he it was actually right next to his ear. And this is a time when a lot of players were getting beamed severely. Jimmy Fox, Bobby Doerr missed a couple months, and it was really something that a lot of doctors were taking note of, and a lot of people in baseball and in the media too were saying something needs to happen. We can't have all these ball players end up getting beamed all the time, and so unfortunately, they didn't have helmets back then, and I want to say, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here. I'd love to be corrected on this, but I want to say the first team that actually introduced helmets was the Pittsburgh Pirates in like maybe 1953 or so. But again, let me know if that's correct. I've heard this. I haven't really done a whole lot of research. They always try to um, institute batting helmets, but a lot of players didn't want to use them. Just like in uh, times before, they didn't want to use protective gear for catchers. But times change. He actually missed 90 games of the 1940 season because of this. And he was very lucky. He ended up retiring in September 9th, 1947. Getting back to the date he got shot. This is really interesting because there's another player involved, and I'm going to tell you about this story. And I'm also going to tell you as well that I have read several articles on this event, and they have changed from, I guess, hour to hour, if that makes any sense. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of newspapers used to have the daily newspaper and the evening newspaper. And so I think what I'm kind of finding out is that the story is changing by the hour, and it's one thing in the daily, and then it's more engrossed. There's more information in the evening newspaper. Now, I've read these and I'm not entirely sure which one is which, to tell you the truth. I think the one that has the more information or the more detail is the evening. But again, I haven't actually read an evening newspaper since I was a kid. So I kind of forgot about this stuff. In any event, let me get on to the articles and I will talk to you in a bit. Spurned shoots star. The Indianapolis Times, July 7th, 1932. Billy Jurges, 24-year-old Chicago Cubs shortstop, was recovering today from two painful bullet wounds received Wednesday when he was shot by an infatuated young divorcee in the mysterious quarrel in the ballplayer's room in a North Side hotel. Jurges was wounded in the lower right side and the left hand by bullets from a 25 caliber pistol. The girl, Violet Popovich, was also shot in the left hand. His wounds are not serious, it was reported at the Illinois Masonic Hospital, and unless complications develop, Jurges will be able to leave the hospital in a week and return to Bruin lineup in 2 or 3 weeks. From her hospital bed, Violet today promised, quote, "If I ever get out of this, I will never try it again," unquote. Jurges has been with the Cubs 2 years. He is understood to have first met Miss Popovich last season. At one time, they were said to have been close friends. William Veeck, president of the Chicago Cubs, said today that the club would not hold an investigation of the affair. Quote, "All we are interested in is Jurges' recovery as soon as possible," unquote, Veeck said. This is from the Minneapolis Star, July 7th, 1932. Jurges' divorcee to recover, shortstop to play in 2 weeks. Girl blames Kai Kyler for breaking up love affair. The infatuation of a young divorcee for a Major League Baseball player almost ended in tragedy. It was revealed today by a letter written by Violet Popovich before she shot William F. Bill Jurges, Chicago Cubs shortstop, in his hotel room yesterday. Jurges, who won his spurs as a Cubs regular this season, was shot twice, once in the left hand and once in the right side. The girl was wounded slightly in the left hand when Jurges struggled to disarm her. Dr. John Davis, Chicago Cubs physician, said today Jurges' wounds were not serious and that he would be able to leave the hospital in a week and probably return to the lineup in 2 weeks. The bullet, which penetrated Jurges' side, struck a rib, which probably saved his life, according to Dr. Davis. After the shooting yesterday in Jurges' room in the Carlos Hotel near Wrigley Field, police announced that Jurges was shot in an attempt to prevent Ms. Popovich from committing suicide. Later, a note was found written to her brother, Mike Popovich, an employee at the YMCA, revealing that she planned to kill Jurges and herself because their love affair had been broken up by Kai Kyler, Cubs outfielder. The note read, "Dear Mike, I have just a few minutes of waiting before I see Billy Jurges, so I write and try to explain everything. I know you'll understand. To me, life without Billy isn't worth living. But why should I leave this earth alone? I'm going to take Billy with me. We are getting along famously, just as everything should go. But a few people like Kai Kyler and Lou Stedman forgot that there might be anything fine and beautiful in our love and drag it in the mud. I know what I'm doing is best for me, and I hate to do it. But my last wish is that Mother, you and the boys go to California and enjoy life to the greatest extent. And remember, Father, once in a while, I can't write anymore. I'm so nervous. I love you all. Violet." Kyler denies implication. Kyler, who lived at the Carlos Hotel with several other Cubs players, said he knew the girl only slightly and denied any implications in her affair with Jurges. Police said that the girl, a 23-year-old brunette, would be booked on charges of assault and intent to kill, but Jurges said he would not press a complaint against her. "She meant only to shoot herself," said Jurges, "and I'm lucky to get off this easy." Miss Popovich, whose stage name is Violet Valley, is said to have made threats against both Jurges and Kyler recently. She registered in the hotel Sunday night after a recent trip to New York, where she saw Jurges. She said she was in Brooklyn when Jurges engaged in a fight with Mickey Finn, Brooklyn player, and she wrote to her brother that she helped to quiet the Cubs player after the battle. Billy Jurges was really very fortunate to have survived this because, you know, it's all about inches, really a matter of inches where that bullet goes. And if the bullet actually entered into uh, his body, as they suggest, it may have broken a rib, but it could have easily have ricocheted off of a rib and into one of his vital organs, and he could have been, you know, Len Kaneki. And so, well, if you, okay, so if you don't know who Len Kaneki is, I completely understand. He was with the New York Giants in the early part of the 1930s, and he ended up uh, basically he was on a airplane, and he, I think, was maybe drunk, and the captain hit him over the head with a fire extinguisher, and that extinguished uh, Len Kaneki. You know, it's just one of those weird things. But in the case of Eddie Wakis as well, Eddie Wakis, again, he was very fortunate too because that bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. And this is a 1949 Bowman, which is actually card number 142 if you're looking for it. It's actually really very nice card. I do have almost an entire year by year run of Eddie Wakis's cards, including a autograph, which I'm very proud of. The difference between Eddie Wakis here and Billy Jurges is that while they didn't kill either player, the experience really affected Eddie Wakis in a negative way later on. And we have no way of knowing how Billy Jurges reacted after this as well because he never spoke about it. And there seems to be a lot of silence here on the part of the ball players and this girl. Now, I don't know if the police actually uh, went ahead and charged her with anything. And the thing is, even if, say, this incident had occurred to you and you didn't want to speak to the police or have that person charged, that doesn't mean that the state can't go in and have that person charged. So, um, obviously, George has made a full recovery. We don't know if Kai Kai Kyler had really any involvement in this either, whether or not he was the instigator of this. I've heard that he was, but again, you know, Kai Kai Kyler is a Hall of Famer for the Cubs and quite good ball player. In fact, this is a really fascinating story, and I think there may be a little bit more to it that we just might never know about. And do I think that Bernard Malamute used part of this story in his own novel? It's very well possible that he knew obviously about this story. You know, it happened in 1932, and more recent to the book was the story of Eddie Wakis, which was, I think, nationally known compared to, I think, Billy Jurges, which I really kind of had to dig for. Um, you know, Billy Jurges' story is again very interesting. Again, I don't even think that it's the first time that something like this has happened either. I seem to remember another case with a ball player from 1900, but in that case, the ball player ended up acing his family, which Bill Bergen, in fact, who was a catcher. I think he was a catcher. In that case, he had mental health issues. And unfortunately, we have a lot of instances of that in sports, and I don't want to get into that today. I just wanted to kind of tell you about this story and how it relates to the book and the movie The Natural, and and to Eddie Wakis himself. And I've heard a lot of really decent things about Eddie Wakis as well. And I'll talk more about him because he really is a fascinating person, along with Billy Jurges. And this is really kind of also something that I wanted to tell you too about is that, you know, everybody has a story to tell, and every ball player has a story as well. And, you know, they may come up to the major leagues or to the professional level for maybe a cup of coffee or have a 18 or 20-year plus career. Um, and some players you may never have ever known about. And you know, the thing is, with a lot of these stories, they just kind of disappear over time, and it takes somebody else to kind of rehash them, if you will, for other generations. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of like to do this, is that this story may not really have been told before, or it may have been forgotten about, and it's not as well known as the story of Eddie Wakes, which obviously I think a lot of people do know about. I could be mistaken about that. But guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. Let me know what you think about this and give me a like and subscribe. I am kind of approaching on the first year anniversary of my channel, and I would love to have 150 subscribers. So guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you later. Bye.